There are two different tracks for the last two stages of organizational life. Instead of an organization closing in, its sixth stage could be the path of renewal. I bet you can guess what this path would have been for Marconi's company, seizing the early opportunity to lead the world in broadcasting, just like they did for point-to-point communications. They could have at least been the leaders of the equipment used for broadcasting. However, when you're already in the closing in stage, it is very hard to change the course an organization is on. In fact, it may be easier to blaze the new trail with a different organization, which is exactly what one of Marconi's office boys did. David Sarnoff chose the path of renewal by jumping ship, so to speak, eventually becoming the leader of RCA, the most powerful communications company in the world, which owned the first national radio network. If an organization picks the path of renewal, its seventh stage will be beginning anew. This is marked by a commitment of going through all the previous stages of organizational life again with modified goals. A good new goal for the Marconi Company would have been to commit themselves to creating sound-modulated transmitters specifically for point-to-mass communications just as soon as they could after that model of communications was conceived. The company didn't have to throw all its resources into the venture, but it did have plenty of cash to keep up with technological developments. If broadcasting had faded away, no real harm. But if it took off, even more success for Marconi. So at least part of the company could have begun anew at exactly the right time with all the technical know-how and the visionary talent to become the biggest player in broadcasting. A good modern example of the path of renewal beginning anew might be Steve Jobs' return to Apple. He left a company focused exclusively on personal computers. When he returned, he gave us the iPod, iTunes, iPad, and the iPhone. Since his death, we now have the iWatch. All of this while still being a competitive player in personal computing. The path of renewal was to become a provider of digital products which modernized people's lives, not just selling better computers. Want another example of closing in and dying? Consider Excite. Never heard of them? Well, I'm not surprised. Excite started in a garage under a different name, grew like mad in the 90s. Yahoo considered buying them for over $5 billion. This might have had something to do with why Excite passed on buying a search engine from two of their college alums for $750,000. Today, Excite is barely a web portal, while that little search engine did much better than expected. So, is broadcasting today in the dying stage? Well, that's a much bigger conversation, but consider this. What if a major television or cable network or large media conglomerate had bought YouTube within a year of its creation in 2005? Wouldn't it now be able to more easily compete with sites like Netflix and Hulu, which have been stealing broadcasting's market share? YouTube would also have provided a kind of minor league venue to test new shows, acquire content from other areas, introduce them to the social media phenomena, and they would have received additional advertising revenue. No, instead, YouTube was bought by non-broadcast-oriented Google in 2006 for $1.65 billion. Now they have the possibility of closing in on broadcasting giants in a rapidly changing media landscape. Perhaps the takeaway here is many broadcasting outlets have been stuck in the closing in stage for so long, they've made it very hard for themselves to find a path of renewal. Whereas Google is not even waiting to become an institution before they are already beginning anew.